Welcome one more day to space in Armonía. In tune with the universal life in Armonía. And today I'm going to be filming the English version of a video I filmed a few days ago concerning a question that I was asked. This is not one of the short videos I promised. They are coming soon. Stay tuned. But today I'm going to be addressing the issue of similitudes and differences between the so-called Buddha mind, enlightenment, mindfulness, and what is known as the mind of the Messiah. Understanding Messiah as anointed with universal understanding, as Master Yeshua taught. He was also called Isho in Aramaic, Yisu in Greek, and he expressed a universal mind which, in my view, includes the Buddha mind but goes beyond, because explains aspects of this world which are not explained in the teaching of Siddhartha Gautama, the awakened one, the Buddha. Buddhahood is a nature that we have inside. It's the awakening of some essence that is covered with the ignorance of our human soul. And there are points in common with the teaching of Siddhartha. I think he was a messenger from the divine, from the feminine aspects of the absolute, so to speak. Because the absolute in itself cannot be known, is absolute being. But there are emanations, and these emanations have feminine or masculine aspects. The feminine side of the divine absolute is known as the Shekinah, the dwelling, the light in which that which is limitless can manifest. And the Messiah was an expression of the Shekinah, just as the Buddha, but on different degrees. And it's important to understand all this because nowadays we have many different teachings, many different religions, viewpoints. The idea of mindfulness and enlightenment is a very popular topic, but very few seem to be understanding in a global way, connecting the dots. As it was said, Yeshua, Ishu, became the body in which the whole divine wholeness dwells. So he didn't claim to be an absolute God. Actually, we find that in Philippians 2:5, when Paul says, let's have the same mind that the Messiah had. Because even though he came in the form of God, and that form is the Yud He Vav Hei, the universal body of expression of life that contains the whole divinity, so to say, he emptied himself from his selfishness and he became a servant of others, of humanity. He also said, awake, you that are asleep, and rise from the dead, and the Messiah will enlighten you, will illumine you. So in a certain way, Paul was saying, become an awakened one, become a Buddha, and then you shall receive the illumination of the universal mind, which is the Messiah. So in my view, the awakened one is part of the process of self-discovery, when we are reconnecting ourselves to our true head, the universal head. Therefore, we cannot separate the so-called Buddha from the Messiah. Don't think of those titles in religious terms. We are not speaking about figures that existed in the past. We are speaking about archetypes of awakening, of enlightenment, and we have to understand the aspects of each one. Actually, I don't see much difference between what the Buddha taught and what others said about Adam, or the intelligence that received Adam. Adam was also known as Atman in India. I have already given some clues about that. Adam and Hava are the same as Atman and Shiva. Atman is Brahma. That was said by teachings in India. And Brahma is the universal mind of the universe, which comes from the Brahman, that which is unconceivable. We cannot say is this or is that. It has no labels or attributes that we can pinpoint, even though it manifests in personal ways, such as Ishvara or Ishwara, which sound very much like Ishu, Yeshua. I've wondered many times if they were referring to the same intelligence, but in India, they didn't have an avatar that manifested the 13 attributes of the Tree of Life as the Messiah did. Yeshua was the full incarnation of the Tree of Life with all the 13 aspects. And obviously Siddhartha Gautama was probably the most enlightened man that manifested in India around the 6th century, before the Common Era, before the arrival of the man that incarnated the Tree of Life and therefore received even the mind of the Father, as it was said, the Father of Lights. And those figures obviously were messengers from the divine, adapting themselves to different stages. That's my conviction. Because humanity was not ready to receive the message of the Messiah at the time of the Buddha. Humanity had to receive certain influence, and the Messiah didn't incarnate by chance 2,000 years ago. There is an anticipation of what is going to take place. The Messiah is the head of the body, is the connection with the Godfather head, so to say. And the Buddha, the enlightened one, incarnated by Siddhartha Gautama, was part of the previous awakenings of the body of the Messiah. And now we can have both in ourselves. We can understand the similitudes and compatibility of both teachings. Now, in my view, the main difference between the teaching of Siddhartha Gautama, the Buddha, and Ishu, the salvation by means of the universal mind, the Holomind, is that the universal mind brings the salvation for something human, something that belongs to this experience. With patience, you will save your souls. He said that. Even though Yeshua also said, he who wants to follow me, let him deny himself, take up his cross, and follow me. Many understand this as don't care about yourself, but he's not referring to not taking care of the body or the mind. He said, disidentify yourself with regard to your selfishness, your impulses. Take up your cross. That's the cross of matter. Earth, water, fire, and air. The body, the emotions, thoughts, the fire of our desires or impulses. That's our cross, and we are crucified with him. It's not me who lives, but the Messiah who lives in me, because I have been crucified with him. That was said by Paul. Because he understood that the Messiah is a nature, a mind, anointed with the universal mind, It's not an external figure as in religious approaches. Therefore, we have to discover our connection with the Messiah, but we have to awake and understand the 13 aspects of the tree of life in ourselves, because that's basically the teaching of Ishu. He brought the possibility of becoming an expression of the qualities, attributes of the Absolute, which in itself cannot be known unless it is manifested through the image of the invisible God. And the image is the tree of life. The Yud He Vav He, the divine verb, is an action, is a way full of love, life, integration. So we have to integrate something from a world which is broken. That is not so clear in the teaching of the Buddha. And I'm not saying he was denying it, because, as the Master said, those who are not against us are with us. So Siddhartha Gautama was with the Messiah. That's my point. Some might say, no, he was a deceiver. He was sent by the devil to deviate the masses from the truth. No, because at that time there was no master as the Buddha, and he was misinterpreted. Even the so-called Buddhists don't understand what he taught. They made of his teachings other forms of ritual, and this is an obstacle. And in a while I'm going to give you keys concerning the true teachings of Siddhartha Gautama, the Buddha, as he explained them in Pali, his own language. But first of all, let's understand the main characteristics of the universal mind of the Messiah, the Holomind. The mind of the Messiah is an expression of the 13 aspects of the tree of life. 13 and not 10, as Kabbalists believe in general. There are 10 receptive aspects, but we also need the first, which is the I amness, the expression of the infinite in ourselves, which is somehow covered by ignorance. The Holy One is living in our center. The only I is Him, but we have to find that in His will. That's the second aspect. His will is not just our desire or our wanting. No, it's the will to be full, the will to be your true self. That's the holiness of the Holy One in yourself. And it has its own finality, its own goal. Will and finality go together. And this is why we represent it close to Keter, the crown. And in this finality, we can also find the teachings of the Buddha. Because the Buddha said, the finality is the way is the goal, the finality. So it's not in the future, it's now. It's an unfolding of something. Yeshua, Ishu, said, I am the way, the truth, and the life. So this way involves taking up the crown of life as well. That's the third aspect, usually represented in Sephirotic trees. But we also need divine conscience, which unites wisdom and understanding, because those are different aspects. You can know many things, even elevated wisdoms, and never understand them because you don't put them in relation with your experience. And from that divine conscience in ourselves, we can also find beauty, the self-recognition of our harmonia inside. And that's Tiferet. And when we recognize that beauty, then we can unfold the creative potential, transform our energy in Yesod, the foundation, and finally express it in Malkut, the plane of realization, manifestation, fulfillment. We are in the physical world, and we have to express that Malkut here. But we can also find Malkut in other dimensions, in the astral world, in the Absolute. So those who have the so-called inner kingdom of the Absolute Heaven come from the Malkut of Atzilut, the plane of emanation. And that's the seed. Look for the kingdom within yourself, but also outside, because there are elements of the Shekinah, the divine presence, the divine energy in this fallen world. She is scattered. This is why she is also called the exiled Shekinah, the exiled daughter. Yud, Hey, Bab, Hey are father, mother, son, and daughter. And we have the daughter in ourselves. The daughter is the feminine divine energy trapped in our bodies. And I think that's connected to the Buddhahood. But the Buddha also has elements from the sun, which is the Bab. Yud, Hey, Bab, Hey. Now notice how the 7 main aspects, which I just mentioned, are the middle pillar in the tree of life. The I amness, and the will with the finality, the crown, divine conscience, self-recognition in Tiferet, fertility, creativity in Yesod, transformation, and realization in Malkut. Those 7 aspects are the main manifestation, the middle pillar. And therefore, we need to unfold those qualities within ourselves in order to develop both the Buddhahood, the awakened mind, mindfulness, and the connection with universal life that emanates from the Absolute. Life is not created, is raised, emanated, formed, educated. We cannot say the Absolute creates from nothing. Nothingness in an absolute sense doesn't exist. That's nonsensical nihilism. And many Buddhists fall into that because they don't understand. They speak of nirvana as extinction in the nothingness, but that means nothing. This is why they retreat from the world, and someone that lives the middle path must be in the world. Even some Buddhists admit that, but there is still much ritualism, just as in Christian forms of understanding the Messiah. Therefore, we have to understand that the mind of the Messiah, the Holomind, has 7 aspects, and I also call it the Zain mind, not the Zen mind, the Buddha mind, but the Zain mind. Zain is a letter which has a value of 7, and it looks like an axe, because the mind of the Messiah separates the truth from falsehood. It's like an axe that cuts, or like a sword, the sword of the word, the divine vibration that helps us separate the wheat from the chaff in ourselves. We have to take off the false garments and save something that is in ourselves. That is known as the son of Adam. This is why the Master said the son of Adam would be elevated just as Moses raised the serpent in the desert. So we are elevating something that is fallen. Obviously, the nature we have inherited from fallen Adam includes aspects of the Shekinah that became entangled with the energy of matter, an energy known as the serpent. And the serpent is not bad in herself, it's just a creative impulse which is very expansive, very centrifugal. It goes away from the center. But the sun is centripetal, is magnetic. I am the light of the cosmos. That light is attractive in the sense that it moves you towards the true center, where everything which is false disappears. So the mind of the Messiah brings you to reality and helps you to understand what the Buddha taught as well. So let's have a look to the teachings of the Buddha. He taught in Pali, he didn't teach in Sanskrit, but some words are very similar. And one of the things that he emphasized is that we have a pure nature, the Buddhahood, the Tathagata, as he said, the divine master, reality in itself, which is covered by 5 aggregates, psychic impulses and garments that must be transcended. And he very often used an expression known as anatta in Pali, which has been translated as non-self, and it means that, non-I. And from this, many have deduced that he was teaching about having non-self, or denying oneself completely. But this is not exactly what he says, because he uses the expression anatta together with the 5 aggregates. For instance, he says Nama, Rupa, Anatta. Nama is name, Rupa is the physical body, Anatta is non-self. So he's saying the name of your personality and your physical body is not self. Atta was known as Atman in Sanskrit, and Atman is Brahma, which is the mind projected by the Absolute. So he was not denying the presence of that I amness. And then he said, Vedana Anatta. The emotions and sensations are not the I, the selfhood, the true divine self. Sana Anatta. The cognition, the labels put by the mind that is constantly thinking is not the true self. Sankara Anatta. The impressions in the unconscious, the impulses that come from unconscious regions are not Atta, the true self. Vijnana Anatta. The empirical consciousness that helps us perceive this world with forms and some meaning is not the self. So what is reality? He was asking us to transcend that which is dissolving constantly, because there is no permanence in the 5 aggregates. Now, he didn't realize or teach that there is something valuable in our human experience, that we can realize the Absolute, expressing certain lovingness in our experiences and making our human personality part of the expression of the universal mind. I'm not saying Buddha was not aware of that, but obviously it's not so clear in his teaching, because he seems to be emphasizing more the transcendence and not the immanence. To be here is to be immanent. And there are some teachings in the East which look for non-duality, and therefore the idea of transcendence and non-transcendence stop being important. This has been suggested. Actually, the word Suchness indicates that there is something constantly here and now, beyond time, and that is absolute reality. But I think there is something missing. We need some archetypes. So we need the figure that brings the meaning of why we are so confused. We are trapped by an energy which is very deceptive. And the Buddha taught about it. He called it Mara. the deceptive energy. Mara is the equivalent to the devil in Western religions. Now, Mara reminds of Mar and Mara, which means bitterness in Hebrew. And Mara disappears as part of the delusions perceived by the Buddhahood, the awakened mind. Buddha taught that evil in itself doesn't exist. There is evil, but is the result of ignorance. Avidya, absence of vidya, vision. And it's true, the Messiah said the same. He said, the prince of this world has already been judged, because he is part of time, mostly. And if the adversary has some divine light from the Shekinah, the divine presence, that will return to the Shekinah. The rest will dissolve. Now, there is something that the Buddha taught about liberation, which is very interesting. He said there are 4 noble truths. The first one is that sentient beings are suffering in this world. That's the symptom. There is death, there is decay, there is disease. And that was one of his first shocking realizations. But there is a cause of the symptom. So he's proceeding like a doctor. And he said that the cause is attachment, Krishna in Pali. He didn't say desire, because some people say he taught about desires as the cause, but we can have desires without attachment. The body has desires, the body wants to eat, but we don't have to be attached to that. We can let go of desires. And he said that this attachment brings co-arising of 12 links. He called that patika samuptada, the arising of 12 links. And the Buddha mind led them to be dissolved, because once we overcome ignorance, these links become weak. And it's very curious they are 12, because that's connected to the Masarot as well, to the 12 aspects of the astrological wheel. Now, the 5 aggregates are included in those 12 aspects. Actually, they come from the 5 aggregates. The empirical consciousness, subconscious and unconscious impressions, the labeling thoughts, emotions, feelings, sentiments, which are more complex, sensations in the body, perceptions. All those links somehow are transcended in the Buddha nature. And this would be the third noble truth, that the end of attachment is the end of suffering. And in the 4th place we have the way of accomplishing that. That's known as the Eightfold path, the Dharma. And pay attention, because this is very interesting. If you notice, he included aspects that seem to be coming from the 4 main planes: Absolute, emanation, the mental plane, Beriya, Yetzirah, which is the astral plane of formation, the emotions, and the physical plane, Asiyah in Hebrew. But the first step is a straight intention. Our intention must be pure, must be upright, neither too strong nor too weak. There must be always a middle tension, a middle armonia, because some tension is necessary, but not too much. So our intention is to be in the right tension. Our straight intention is to be a pure will, but we also need a straight vision, a vision which is global, impartial, not partial, not seeing things partially, in parts, in segments. No, everything is a wholeness. Holomind. But we also need a straight thinking, motivational thinking. We need to be motivated to be meditating on the key aspects of inner knowing, inner transcendence and realization. But this is not possible without a straight concentration. We must have the ability to focus on one point, but also on several points, and that's known as straight attention. Attention, absence of tension, because we need to relax the mind in order to perceive several aspects at the same time. The choiceless awareness, as some say. And we also need a straight effort. That's an emotional aspect. And again, we need to be in the middle. We should not make too intense efforts, but we should not be lying down like lizards doing nothing. We must apply some effort. Because some people say, no, you don't have to do anything. You just have to be enlightened and meditating 8 hours a day. Well, that's not what the Buddha taught. This world is difficult. You have to apply some effort in your inner discovery, in whatever you want to bring to the world. Everything demands some work. And obviously we have to release some tension in the true Holomind of the Messiah, because easy is my yoke and light my burden. Follow me with a tranquil heart. That was the teaching of Yeshua, because he knew about the Buddhahood. Now, we also need a straight word. The Buddha said, it's better to say one word that brings love and healing to others than to say 100 words full of emptiness or even hate. The art of speaking is something really difficult. He sometimes taught without words. In one occasion, he was asked about the truth, and the Buddha raised a rose, and people didn't say anything. And his close disciple, Ananda, smiled slightly, because he was the one that was understanding what the Buddha meant, that the truth is flourishing like a rose, full of beauty and proportion, harmonia. The lotus flower is one of the symbols of the Buddhahood. And in a sense, that's the right word, because everything around us is speaking without even saying a word. Everything around us is the divine word somehow. Sometimes it's twisted, it's true, but we have to recognize the truth even in the shadows. Now finally, the eighth step in the Eightfold Path is a straight action. Our actions must be full of the other qualities, so that we don't break anything, we don't cause any additional trouble. The action in the middle path. And remember, the middle path is not a neutral path. You can be in one side or the other, but that's adversity. And we have to make peace, as the Master said. Both Ishu and Siddhartha Gautama taught about reconciliation. So, how could the Buddha be against the Messiah? Obviously, if you commit suicide, meditating 8 hours a day, doing nothing, or thinking that you just have to dissolve yourself in an emptiness, that's falling apart from the way of the Buddha and the way of the Messiah, I think. Actually, I think the Buddha comes from beyond the illusory worlds, and he transcends the lower three planes, the mental plane, the emotional plane, and the physical plane. Because, as it is said, the three bodies of the Buddha are Nirmakaya, nature, Sambhogakaya, which is the astral world, which can include the emotions and the mental world, and Dharmakaya, the world of truth. So that world of truth can be somehow identified with the emanation. You can develop truth in a greater or lesser degree, but truth is truth. You have somehow the wholeness to be unfolded. It's like a seed. And we have the Buddhahood as the seed, which was planted in Adam. And it is said Adam reached Keter of Beria, touching the Atzilut in the sphere of Tiferet of Atzilut. Kabbalists say that the greatest messenger on earth has been Moses, that he acquired the same intelligence as Adam in the Garden of Eden, Keter of Atzilut. But I think the Buddha also transcended that plane of Beria and touched Atzilut, because he was a messenger, misunderstood, just as many other messengers. He was also assassinated in his physical body, I think. I don't think he just ate a meal in a bad state, as it is said. Because if something is in a bad state, you don't eat it. I think someone put poison in his food. If you notice, all the greatest teachers on earth have been physically killed, murdered. Siddhartha Gautama and Ishu in his physical form are the two greatest examples. But there are other teachers that were assassinated as well. Pythagoras, Socrates, many Kabbalists. And this is because the forces of darkness are afraid of dissolution. So it's in our hands to dispel all darkness within, so that we can be part of this Buddhahood and also the Holomind of the Messiah, which are together. We have to awake and follow the true way of inner discovery, transcending the 5 levels of our delusions, so that we can touch this pure I amness in ourselves. The Atman is the Adam that must be uncovered, recovered somehow. That's part of the Shekinah, which is the body of the Son. The daughter is the body of the Son, and the Son is the body of the Absolute, which is expressed through the Father. I and the Father are one. Let them be one with us, as I am one with you. That is said in John 17. So let's understand the connection between our psychic nature and our divine consciousness, which is feminine, Shekinah, and masculine, the Son. I think the Buddha had an aspect of the Shekinah and some degree of the Son, but he didn't develop the manhood, the divine manhood fully. Otherwise, he would have said other truths about why all this chaos came to be. And this is why Ishu spoke in parables, demanding a greater vision and understanding, the one which is required to express the universal love of the Father, which gives himself in each one of us. That's the connection with the universal will. And it's true, the Buddha also spoke about love and compassion. He spoke of the 4 sublime states: love, compassion, which is feeling the pain of others and helping them to be liberated; altruistic joy, be glad and rejoice when others find joy; and equanimity, steadiness, to be constant, to be following the way as the main goal now, not in the future, not in the past, is in the instant, from moment to moment. That's part of the Messiah as well. So the Buddha, in a sense, is still part of the body of the Messiah. This is the conclusion, and thank you very much for listening with attention. If you have more questions or clues, leave them in the box of comments. So let's keep dispelling all darkness, opening the heart and the mind to receive and give infinite love and modified life, integral conscience, and deep, blissful serenity.